Technology certainly has been an issue that's impacted the church across these years as it has exploded in use, and we've been trying to figure out how best to use those instruments in ministry.
Hello, this is Pastor Terry Goodman, and I want to welcome you to the Wesleyan Connection. This podcast is primarily for the clergy and laity of the Holston Annual Conference. Join with me now as I take a look around the Connection and share some of the things happening in the churches of our annual conference. Good morning. This is Pastor Terry Goodman. I want to welcome you to episode number 87 of my podcast, The Wesleyan Connection. That's sort of an insider's look at the people, the places, the churches, the events, the happenings of the Holston Annual Conference. And I'm glad that you have stuck around with me for 87 episodes. I'm pushing on for episode 100 in a few more weeks, and I hope that you'll be there. And who knows, maybe I'll have a surprise guest. I'm working on it, but I can't guarantee it. So today's episode is a conversation on the stage of annual conference. Yes, I know we are well into October, pushing into November, but I recorded a lot of interviews at annual conference, and I'm slowly using them up as the weeks go by. Today's interview is with Reed Shell. Reed and I have known each other on and off through the years. I wouldn't call us close friends, but we bump into each other and have a conversation every now and then. I caught him while he was up on stage before the afternoon session one afternoon, and it's going to be a little noisy in the background. I'm sorry about that. There's a lot of talk going on in the auditorium, but Reed and I talk about ministry. This is sort of one of those pastor-to-pastor talks that I like to have every now and then. We talk about the future of the church, and we talk about what retirement might be like for us as we look forward to that day. Each of us are in the latter part of our ministries, so to speak. We're not spring chickens anymore, but we've still got a few good years left in us. And so I hope you enjoy this conversation with Reed. I invite you to share this podcast with other people. I invite you, if you're listening to it at Spreaker.com, to go ahead and create yourself a free account and become a follower there. If you're listening to me from YouTube, keep listening there. Or if you're listening from the Facebook connections or the Twitter connections, just let me know. Offer a comment every now and then to let me know what you think of these podcasts. It would greatly help me and maybe give me some guidance as to some future things that might be covered here. So again, here's the interview. I sort of jump right into the middle of it, so it's a little bit abrupt as it begins, but hope you enjoy the conversation that Reed and I had on the stage prior to a session at annual conference. I'm up on stage prior to the 2 o'clock session of annual conference talking with my friend Reed, and he's been in ministry maybe a year or two longer than I have. How many years of ministry have you?
About 40.
Right about 40 years?
40 years, yes.
Well, I'm getting ready to start year number 34, so you've got a little bit of an advantage on me. As you think about your 40 years in ministry, have you seen things sort of change over time?
Well, I think culture has pushed us into some changes that we might not have embraced otherwise. Technology certainly has been an issue that's impacted the church across these years as it has exploded in use, and we've been trying to figure out how best to use those instruments in ministry. And some of the cultural ideas have certainly shifted that have impacted the attitudes of folks who are either moving away from the church or trying to find something in the church that will help them navigate some of the cultural changes, the moral changes that have gone on around us. So there's probably a lot of other things that have happened, but those are ones that just always come to my mind whenever I'm thinking about it, as far as what's happening with the impact on the church today.
When you think of the future of the church, and I mean past 2019 and all that stuff. We've faced declines since we became the United Methodist Church. I don't know if we've had a good positive year or not in terms of growth, but what do you see the future of the church being? What's the church going to be like in 2030 maybe, or 2035?
Well, I really don't know. The comfort that I take is that the church is of God, so I think it will continue. What it will look like years from now, I have no clue whatsoever. So I think that's something that at least I hold on to when everybody's concerned about decline, and while the percentage of the American population seems to continue to rise that say they have no religious affiliation. My contention is that there's still a need for what the church has to offer. It just seems to be being met in some other ways. As I have watched the pendulum swing back and forth in a variety of areas across the years, I'd like to think that pendulum will swing back in the direction of church, but I still think that we're gonna have to adapt in order to draw people in and maybe repackage our message just a little bit, not change the core of the message, but find a way to talk about it in a way that the world around us is going to hear that. So that it's just a bit like Pentecost, the disciples began to speak in a way so that they could be heard. Well, I think the church of today in the 21st century is going to have to speak in a way so that the larger world will hear us and know that what we are still saying is there is a core to life itself that I still think is relevant, even in this technologically sophisticated age we live in. But I know some people have gotten disillusioned with what religion has offered and what the church has offered. But I still think we still have a relevant message for the world in which we live. But what it's going to look like, I really don't know. I really don't know.
I don't know the answer to that one either. I know that in probably 12 to 13, maybe 14 years, I'll be sitting on this stage for retirement. I was listening to him talk today, and I was thinking to myself, what in the world am I going to say if they're still doing those videos then? And then prior to our starting this conversation, you'd mentioned that as well. What are some of your thoughts on, both of us are sort of in the latter part of our ministries, so to speak, the active ministries. What kind of thoughts go through your mind right now?
Well, even today as I listened to the retirees talk, I couldn't help but think about really the things that nurtured me along the way, because I resisted. I mean, I was raised in the church. My family, that's just what we did, so it hasn't been foreign to me. But what was foreign to me was the idea that I would ever be in the professional ministry or the ordained ministry, and I resisted that. Even to the point where I went to seminary, I went with a different understanding of what I was going to do when I got out. But I then went into the local church, and that's where I have been. But I think of my own home church that provided, and my own family that provided the roots out of which everything else began to blossom and grow, even though I didn't know that was the direction that it was going to take for my life. I guess I learned that sometimes my plans aren't always the one that's going to predominate. So it's been kind of interesting to begin to think back over the years and think of not only my home church, but then all the other churches that I was a part of, that I tried to pastor, and the parishioners I ran into, and the folks I still run into periodically at annual conference, and we have an opportunity to spend a few minutes catching up, and that's about all the time we get. But it does me good to think that I had an impact on somebody's life, and they had an impact on mine across the years. Because I probably won't be long till I'll be up here for the retirement service as well.
Well, I've saved the most difficult question for last, and it's going to require all of your theological expertise and learning to answer this in even close to an appropriate way. What would you consider to be your favorite dessert?
Anything chocolate. That's an easy one. Anything
hot chocolate, cold chocolate.
I'll take chocolate on most of the forms that it presents itself. I'll opt for that.
Well, thank you very much. For those listening out there, if he's coming to a fellowship dinner near you, make sure there's plenty of chocolate.
Thanks, Terry.
Thank you.
This is Pastor Goodman. Thanks for listening to this edition of the Wesleyan Connection. Be sure to check back often for more podcasts.